Good day, guys, and welcome to Taxation 1013, aka Income Taxation. And for today's discussion, we are back with another pre-recorded lecture on the continuation of the introduction on income tax. For this day, we will talk about the SITUS rules. So before anything else, we would like to start us off with a quick prayer. So you may go ahead and do your own short prayer at home. And with that, let's begin. In our past video lectures on the introduction of income taxation, we have come to identify or to realize two major issues or two major questions and two major steps for us to actually get a hang of the overall income taxation process. In our first question, we have identified what actually constitutes gross income, right? So that is our very first foundational question. What is gross income? Is this item constituting what a gross income is all about? So under gross income, we have come to realize the three-step test or the three-test function. That is, we have to first identify whether or not that certain item is actually a return on capital, not a mere return of capital. Number two, we have come to realize whether or not such particular item of income is actually a realized benefit. So if it is already a benefit but it was not yet realized, meaning it was not yet received, or it has not yet transpired or materialized via an exchange transaction, then that is an unrealized benefit. On the other hand, we can have realization on increase of wealth, but it does not actually increase our benefits. So those are some of the specific rules that we have in terms of realized benefit. And lastly, of course, we have to identify whether or not such particular income is exempted from constitutional limitations, statutory provisions, contractual provisions, and such other things that may give them the proper exemption. So if we have passed the three tests, the return on income test, the realized benefit test, and the non-exemption test, then definitely that is an item of gross income. And on the past video, we have also come to realize the importance of identifying the type of taxpayer as to their location. Am I right? So, yesterday, or in our previous discussion, we have talked about the fact that we have types of taxpayers in terms of their locations. We have identified a resident citizen, a non-resident citizen, a resident alien, a non-resident alien engaged in trade or business, as well as a non-resident alien not engaged in trade or business. And we have identified, or we have laid down the rules on how to identify them in an easy manner. And I've also sent out an introductory examples for you guys to explore so that you may have a deeper understanding of the application, of the identification of types of taxpayers. Now we go to our next question. Who has jurisdiction over taxes? AKA SITUS of taxation, or the SITUS rules. In our lesson with regards the fundamentals of income, or the fundamentals of the power of taxation in our lesson 1, we have actually already discussed the basic SITUS rules or the basic SITUS principles. But now we will go even deeper and we will talk about SITUS rules in income taxation. Okay, in income taxation. So after determining the items of gross income and after determining the type of taxpayer, we will now go to the SITUS rules. Okay, given the different sets of income that a taxpayer has, okay, and given the type of taxpayer that we have, who has jurisdiction over a particular item of income? And we will answer that right now. But first, we have to understand what SITUS is all about. Diba? We have come to understand in our previous discussion that SITUS talks about jurisdiction. SITUS talks about who has the power to tax. Okay? So, this is what we call the Territoriality Principle, right? So, we have come to realize back then that if a government has its own land territory, the government also has its own tax territory in which he only has a limited power of who to tax depending on what the jurisdiction is all about. So, it depends on his tax jurisdiction, or it depends on the government's jurisdiction to exercise the taxing power. Okay? And we have actually certain rules regarding some income items for us to determine the SITUS of income. Yan. Okay, it's different from the source, okay? So kapag ho sinabi natin kasing source of income, okay, where the income actually comes from. Okay, where the income actually comes from. So, iba po siya sa SITUS, ha? Iba po siya sa SITUS or place of taxation. In a sense that the source and the SITUS may be different from each other. Okay, the source or the SITUS may be different from each other. In a sense that we may have gotten the income here in the Philippines, or we may have generated the income here in the Philippines, but the SITUS or the place of taxation is on another country for a different reason. Okay? Or the source of income may be abroad, but the SITUS of the income is still in the Philippines for a number of reasons as well. Later on, we will soon find out why source and SITUS is different. Source and SITUS is different. Okay. With that, we have defined what SITUS is all about. Again, SITUS is all about jurisdiction. Okay, and now we will go and continue with our specific SITUS rules. Okay, now, these are the 4 basic SITUS rules for 4 basic types of income. We have interest income, we have royalty income, we have rent income, and we have service income. Okay? So these are the SITUS rules for the following types of income. First, we go with the interest income. Interest income. Interest income, we all know for a fact that interest is the added benefit due to value of money, or the value of, or time value of money. Okay, as we speak, it is the time value of money component of all of our deposits. Okay, whether that may be a bank deposit, certificate of deposit, time deposit, bond deposits, investment in bonds, stocks, etc. Okay, it earns interest. At yung interest ho na yon, okay, interest ho na yon, it is a return. Okay, it is a return on investment. It is a return on investment. It may not have been realized, or no, it may not have been given to us in the term of monetary compensation, but it increased our value in a certain manner, which is why it is already a realized benefit. Kasi nga, even if we have not received that in terms of monetary compensation or in terms of money, it was credited already to our cash account. So upon crediting to our cash account, it actually constitutes a constructive receipt, and that makes it a realized benefit already. And interest income is definitely not exempted, syempre. So it is an item of gross income. Okay, and what is the SITUS of the interest income? It is wherever the debtor or the deposit resides. So, kung saan man ho nakasituate yung deposit or yung debtor, okay, dun ho ang place or SITUS of taxation. Say for example, may isang resident na may may isang non-resident na may utang here in the Philippines. Okay, syempre, 'di ba? Syempre, since hindi, joke lang. Mali. Ako for example, I have a deposit in Philippine National Bank. And Philippine National Bank, we all know for a fact, is a local bank here in the Philippines. And then it earned around 100,000 peso interest for the particular year. So yung 100,000 po na yon, it is as if the jurisdiction is in the Philippines. Why? Because the deposit is within the Philippines. Kasi nga, yung bangko na yon nasa loob ng Pilipinas. And therefore, it is logical to say as well that the interest income that I receive is from the Philippines. Okay, is from the Philippines. Now, that is the SITUS rule for interest income. Another example would be, say, a resident alien residing in the Philippines but is an alien individual, not a citizen. Okay, not a citizen, but an alien rather, diba? An alien has a deposit in the Bank of South Korea, in a bank in South Korea, and the bank in South Korea already announced a 10% interest on the deposit of that particular person. Okay? So, ano ang SITUS nun? Loob o labas. Okay? Obviously, since we are talking about interest income, wherever the deposit resides, dun ho ang SITUS. So, in that case, it's not within the Philippines, but rather it is outside of the Philippines. Okay? Outside of the Philippines. Siya nga pala, please take note that in taxation or in taxation subjects, yung outside na term is synonymous with the term without. Okay? Okay? Kasi baka mamaya malito kayo eh. Na ginagamit ko talaga to. Outside is synonymous with the term without. Okay? Without. Yeah. So, wag po kayong malilito if later on, baka makita nyo tong word na without. Tapos medyo nagtaka kayo. Anong ibig sabihin ng without? It is synonymous with the term outside. So, the interest income may be within the Philippines or without the Philippines, aka outside of the Philippines. Okay? So, yun ho yung SITUS rule for the interest income, wherever the debtor or the depositor resides. So, kung ako, for example, may receivable ako from a Chinese national, which is actually residing in China right now, diba? And then, nag-earn siya ng interest. So, yung interest na kuha ko, although nandito siya sa Pilipinas, although na-receive ko siya effectively here in the Philippines in the form of cash, it is still earned outside of the Philippines or without the Philippines, because interest income is earned, or the SITUS of interest income is wherever the debtor or the deposits reside. Now we go to the next SITUS rule, which involves royalties. So if you're not familiar with royalty, royalty talks about a compensation for the use of an intangible asset, or for the public use, or for public rent of an intangible property. Ito ho yung compensation for the use of an intangible property. So ano nga ba ho yung mga constitution ng royalty? So royalty is for the use of intangible. Okay, usually these are in the form of patents or copyrights. Okay. Artistic works. Okay, artistic works. Ayan. So, yun ho ang constitution ng royalty. Royalty is actually a compensation that is given to a creator in exchange for the use of the intangible property, or the public use of intangible property, authorized use of intangible property. It may be in the form of a patent, a copyright, an artistic work. Okay? That may be a book, musical compositions. Okay? 'Di ba? So kung makikita nyo guys, much of the income that is being received by artists around the world, or even artists here in the Philippines, like say for example sina Ben and Ben, Taylor Swift, even some of the novel writers such as sila J.K. Rowling, for example, the the creator of Harry Potter series, or the creator of Harry Potter books. Yan. J.R.R. Martin. Okay? Or R.R. Martin pala, I'm sorry. J.R.R. Martin. J.R.R. Tolkien. R.R. Martin. Ayun. the creator of Game of Thrones novels, di ba? Ah, yung mga yun ho, sila ho, may tinatawag tayong royalty na natatanggap. Nakakatanggap po sila ng royalty. Much of their income actually comes from royalty because, okay, because they are giving license to everyone, okay, for the use of for their artistic work or their intangible property. And in exchange, they receive compensation out of it. So sobrang crucial po na kailangan nating irespeto ang artistic works ng mga taong to. Why? Okay? Kasi kung mapapansin nyo, madami ng mga napipiratang mga albums, song covers, 'di ba? Records, even movies and films, novels, ganyan. Sobrang nakikita mo na lang sila PDF version or clean version online free of charge. And that is actually illegal, guys. That's actually illegal. Illegal reproduction of artistic works without the authority or consent from the creator is prohibited by law pursuant to Intellectual Property Act. Okay, pursuant to Intellectual Property, ayaw yan ng batas. Kasi it undermines, okay, or it prejudices the rights of the creators, okay, of the creators. Which is why, kung mapapansin nyo, si Spotify, di ba si Spotify, nagbabayad ho siya ng income per stream of the music that the artist is uploading there. So say for example, si Taylor Swift, di ba? Si Taylor Swift, noon, wala sa Spotify ang kanyang catalog because of certain issues regarding royalties. Kasi si Spotify noon, okay, hindi nagbabayad ng royalties, or if nagbabayad man, sobrang baba ng royalties. And she actually fought for the fairness for all artists, not just for her but for all artists. Ang sabi niya, babalik lang ko ako sa Spotify if ipapangako nyo na tama yung royalties na ibabayad nyo sa mga artists na nasa Spotify. And when the time in which case this already came, nung sinabi ni Spotify that they agree with Taylor Swift, okay, they changed their royalty information or their royalty computations and royalty payment schemes. Bumalik ho si Taylor Swift sa Spotify. And that is actually, okay, that is actually a great thing and a very great milestone in Spotify. Anyway, we go back. Say for example, yun nga, si Taylor Swift is an artist, and every stream of one of her songs, okay, is counted as a revenue in which it has its corresponding royalty. So, say, nakapag-accumulate siya ng 100,000 streams sa isang particular music. Okay? And i-compute yun ni Spotify. Si Spotify po, on the other hand, yung na-compute niya, ibabayad ho niya kay Taylor Swift in exchange for Taylor Swift's authorization over Spotify to use her songs or to publish and upload their songs on Spotify. So, kung nakikita nyo, si Taylor Swift has the license, Taylor Swift has the authority to give Spotify the license to use her songs. Okay, to use her songs on Spotify. But in exchange, Spotify should give Taylor Swift a fair amount of compensation depending on how many times her songs are streamed, and that is what we call royalty. Ganun din ho sa books. Okay? Si J.K. Rowling, okay, she actually receives a percentage of all the books that are being sold worldwide. Mga Harry Potter books na naibebenta worldwide. She earns a percentage of every book, okay, being sold, and that is for license to use her artistic work. That is the book that she published, and that is a manifestation of royalty. So ano ho yung SITUS ng royalty? It is where the intangible is used or employed. Kung saan man ho nagagamit yung intangible or yung artistic work, at kung saan man ho siya naka-employ. So, if it was published here in the Philippines, for example, or if it is being exercised, okay, here in the Philippines. Okay? If it is being exercised here in the Philippines, then definitely, Okay, that is within. Okay, that is within the Philippines. So, yun ho yung situs ng royalty income. Wherever the intangible property is being used or being employed or being exercised. So, if it is published within the Philippines or if it's exercised within the Philippines, yung rights nun nandito sa Pilipinas at dito niya ine-exercise yung rights na yon or yung lisensya na yon, then that is an example of a royalty income subject to taxes within the Philippines. However, if kabaliktaran naman, so kapag na-employ siya, ginamit siya, na-publish siya, in-exercise yung right na yon abroad, then, okay, it is a royalty income perceived to be earned outside of the Philippines or without the Philippines. Okay? Yun ho yung SITUS rule for royalty income. Next, rent income. Okay, rent income. Rent income naman po, it is where the property is located. So, yung nalilikom ho nating income from rent, okay, you already know what rent is, so no need to explain that. Yung nalilikom ho natin income with respect to rent, okay, ang situs ho nun, or yung jurisdiction ho nun, nakadepende sa kung saan nakalocate si property. That is, if the rent was as a result of a property located here in the Philippines, say, pinarenta mo yung condo mo, and yung condo na yon nasa Pilipinas, then that is an income or rent income within the Philippines. However, if pinarenta mo naman yung condo mo na nasa Singapore, okay, it is considered a rent income which is outside or without the Philippines because the property is located in Singapore and not in the Philippines. Okay, yun ho yung SITUS rule for rent income. And lastly, we have service income or income from services. Obviously, ang jurisdiction po ng service income would be kung saan ho na-render si service. Okay, say, I rendered accounting work here in the Philippines, then, okay, it is a service income within the Philippines. If I rendered a service income outside of the Philippines, then it is an income outside of the Philippines. Okay? So, yun ho yung mga apat na basic SITUS rules that we need to remember. Okay? Okay, now that we've all said and done all of these SITUS rules, let's talk mnemonics para at least, 'di ba, syempre mas matatandaan nyo siya. So gumawa ako ng mnemonics for you guys. So ang mnemonics natin sa SITUS rules for these types of income is Are You Real Sir ID. Okay, so kung nakikita nyo, tinatanong, siguro pumunta sa guard, 'di ba? Pumunta sa guard tapos tatanungin ni guard, totoo ka ba, sir? Pahingi ng ID. Are you real, sir? ID. Okay? Are you real, sir? ID. So, what is RU? RU is royalty income. Royalty, okay, it is where the intangible is used. Royalty use. Okay? Royalty use. Rent income naman, okay? Real. Real. Rent income and then location. Rent income, location. So, again, royalty income or R, royalty, U, use, RU. And then RIL, rent income location. Rent income location. Sir, service income rendered. Service income rendered. So where it is rendered. And lastly, interest income. Interest debtor. Interest deposit. Interest debtor, interest deposit. Okay, yun ho yun. Yun ho yung SITUS rules natin or yung parang mnemonics natin for the SITUS rules of these 4 types of income. Okay? So now that that is settled, okay? So now that that's settled, let's go to an example. Okay? Gawa tayo ng discuss tayo ng isang example para at least maintindihan nyo. Okay? Para at least maintindihan natin kung paano siya. Okay? So how does the SITUS rule works? Okay? So we have here an example, okay, of the SITUS principle. so the problem goes this way. Okay? O Yun Hee had the following income items. Okay? The first item is an interest income from a deposit in Bank of Korea. Okay, Bank of Korea. So take note nyo yung mga yan, ha? Okay, so it is a Bank of Korea. Siyempre, nasa Korea yan. Kasi siyempre, bank yan sa Korea, di ba? Next, an interest income from Philippine government bonds. Okay, siyempre, Philippine government bonds. Sino pa naman yan? Philippine government. Dito sa Pilipinas. Next, royalties from books published here in the Philippines. So, na-publish daw ho yung mga anong tawag dito? Yung mga books na yon here in the Philippines, and O Yun Hee received royalties from them. Okay, received royalties. Okay, next, rent income from properties located both in Incheon and Jeju, but the rent agreement was made in Manila. So, you know, Incheon and Jeju is or are locations in South Korea, di ba? But then, the rent agreement daw, sinabi, it was made here in Manila. Okay, it was made here in Manila. And lastly, professional fees for services rendered to American nationals in Ortigas Center, Pasig City. Okay, in Pasig City. Okay, these are our 5 income items. So now, titignan natin kung ano yung SITUS nilang dalawa. Unahin natin si interest income from a deposit in Bank of Korea. Okay? What we said when we say interest income, kung saan ho nakalocate or saan po naka-reside yung debtor or yung deposit natin. In this case, this is a deposit in a bank in South Korea or in Korea. Therefore, okay, therefore, yung interest income, it is assumed to be, okay, outside or ganito, without. Okay, ganito din ninyo ganito din ninyo isulat para mas okay. So, it's either within or without. Okay? Para mas makasunod. Okay? Pero you can go naman and use in or out. Pwede lang, 'di ba? Or pwedeng gamitin nyo yung check for within and then X for without. Pwede yung mga ganon. Okay? Pwede yung mga ganon. So, it's your it's your discretion kung ano yung mga tick marks na gagamitin nyo when you are answering your questions. Okay, I just prefer with ito kasi mas mas detalyado siya. Especially when I'm teaching, 'di ba? At least para mas maintindihan niyo. So anyway, again, when we say interest deposit or interest income, its SITUS is where the depositor the deposit or the debtor resides. Okay, so since it's a deposit in South Korea, then it is an interest income in Korea or outside the Philippines, without the Philippines. Okay? Next, interest income from Philippine government bonds. Obviously, okay, it is within. Kasi, ang debtor natin is si Philippine government. Okay? Ang debtor dito is si Philippine government. And si Philippine government, syempre, obviously, the Philippine government is situated here in the Philippines, of course. Diba? So therefore, okay, the Philippine government bonds is an income within the Philippines. Next, we have royalties from books published in the Philippines. So maalala niyo yung rules natin sa royalty? RU. Diba? RU. Royalty, use. So na-use ho yung royalty or na-use ho yung intangible here in the Philippines because the books was published in the Philippines. Meaning, na-exercise ho yung right ng intangible property dito sa Pilipinas. Therefore, yung karampatan hong na royalty, it is within the Philippines. Okay? So, this is within. Next, rent income from properties located in Incheon and Jeju. But the rent agreement was made in Manila. Kaya ano ho again yung natin, yung SITUS rule natin for rent income? Kapag po rent income, kung saan ho nakalocate si property. R-I-L, real. Diba? Rent income, location. Rent income, location. So, saan nakalocate yung properties? Incheon and Jeju. Incheon and Jeju. So, they are outside the Philippines. So, therefore, yung karampatang rent income, outside. Okay? So, it is without. Okay? So, hindi nyo i-regard ito. I-disregard nyo ho itong rent agreement was made in Manila. You do not, okay? You do not consider this statement. Kahit ho, dito man sa Pilipinas, okay, na perfect yung rental agreement or rental contract. Okay? Pero yung properties ho nakalocate sa Incheon and Jeju or so anywhere around the world, abroad, yung location ho ang susundin and not kung saan ginawa yung agreement or yung kontrata. Yung location ho ang susundin. Always remember real. R-I-L. Okay? R-I-L. So without ho yan. And lastly, we have professional fees for services rendered to American nationals in Ortigas Center, Pasig City. So ano ho yan? Sir, di ba? Service income rendered. Service income rendered. Kung saan mo ho ni-render yung service, doon ho ang SITUS ng service income. So, in this case, okay, in this case, kahit ho sa American national ho siya ni-render, Miss Oyon Hee, okay, kahit na sinerbisyohan po niya ay mga American nationals, but then, the service was made in Ortigas Center, Pasig City. Therefore, let's just stick with the SITUS principle. It was, okay, rendered in the Philippines. Therefore, the service income, the professional fee is within the Philippines. Okay? Within the Philippines. So, makikita nyo ho yung makikita nyo ho yung classification natin, SITUS classification natin na tinatawag. Diba? Let's check our answers kung tama. Again, the incomes within are the interest income from the Philippine government bonds, royalties from books in the Philippines, and professional fees for services rendered in Ortigas. And then yung mga without naman, syempre yung interest from deposit in Bank of Korea, and rent income from properties located in Incheon and Jeju. Tingnan natin kung tama tayo. Ting! Tama. Okay? Tama. Okay? Yung deposits natin, it is without or outside the Philippines. Sayang, hindi kasi siya hindi siya nagtugma ng column, pero hayaan yun na. Nasa tama tayo. Okay? Tama tayo. So now, these are the SITUS classifications. These are the SITUS classifications. And later on, ma-realize natin bakit ho importante na kailangang i-segregate natin ng income natin regarding the SITUS. So, kailangan nating i-segregate yung mga income within and income outside. Napaka-importante ho. Because, later, papag-uusapan natin. Siyempre, suspense muna tayo, diba? Anyway, again, reiterating, so ito yung sagot. Okay? Ang deposits without, yung bonds within, yung books within, income from rent outside or without, and lastly, professional fees within. So, yung susuma total po natin yan, yung mga total income po natin na within the Philippines is 650,000. While yung total income natin without or outside the Philippines would be 500,000 only. Okay? 500,000 only. And, yung total, syempre, yung total dito is, kapag ito total natin to, it is 150. So, 1,150,000 ho yung total income natin. Okay? Which is segregated, of course, within and outside. Ngayon, napaka-crucial ho na kailangan nating i-segregate ang within and without because of the type of taxpayer. So, kung maalala nyo, di ba, nung nag-discuss tayo ng type of taxpayers, resident citizens are taxed both on income within and without. The rest, that is non-resident citizen, resident alien, non-resident alien engaged in trade, and non-resident alien not engaged in trade, lahat ho sila, okay? Lahat ho sila within lang. Within lang. Okay, so kung tatanungin kayo, assuming Oyon Hee, okay, assuming Oyon Hee is a resident alien, how much should be her taxable income? Anong sasagot nyo? Ito lang. 650,000. Assuming Oyon Hee is a non-resident citizen, ano yung sasagot mo? ito lang din. Within. Okay? Assuming, o yun he is a resident citizen, ano yung isasagot mo? Ito, plus ito. Or, 1,150,000. Okay? Actually, nandito siya. Pinagod ko lang kayo. Actually, nandyan na yung sagot. Diba? So, ito yung SITUS rule. Ito yung SITUS rule. Kapag i-combine natin siya with the type of taxpayer, okay? With the type of taxpayer, kung mapapansin nyo, kapag resident citizen ho yung taxpayer natin, in this case, kapag resident citizen si o yun he, taxable po siya, okay, on the income within and outside, or within and without the Philippines. So, ang total na reportable income niya would be 1,150,000. Yan ho yung masasubject sa tax, if ever. Okay? Kapag naman ho non-resident citizen, si o yun he, within lang. So, 650,000. Actually, na-discuss na rin natin yung dahilan kung bakit, di ba? Kung bakit, mga resident citizens are both taxed within and outside. Okay, they are taxed within and outside kasi nga, resident citizens have full access to public utilities and public government services. So, may preferential advantage po sila for being both a resident and a citizen of the country. And, kailangang i-tax yung mga outside income nila. Why? To avoid evasion. To avoid evasion. Kasi, they can just report their income abroad. Or pwede lang silang mag-generate ng income abroad by selling abroad, okay? Or by generating sales abroad, doing services abroad, kahit na considered na resident citizen naman sila. It is a way to evade income, taxes. Which is why, okay, the tax code has been decided to make resident citizens taxable within and outside the Philippines. So, yung mga income na na-generate nila sa loob ng Pinas at sa labas ng Pinas, okay, both of them are taxable for a resident citizen, but not for the rest. Okay, ang mag-a-apply po sa rest is yung territoriality or SITUS principle. Yung mga within lang. Okay? Within lang. So, kapag non-resident citizen si o yun he, syempre, ang reportable income lang niya is yung nasa loob na 650,000. Same is true with resident alien, NRA engage in trade, and NRA not engage in trade. Okay? Within lang ho sila. So, si resident citizen lang ho talagang maiiba. Okay? So, yan ho yung application ng SITUS principles. Okay? SITUS principles for the 4 basic types of income. Pero, syempre, wait. There's more. Okay? There's more. Wow. Suspense ka, girl. Meron pa ho tayong mga ibang SITUS principles. So, kung kanina, okay, kung kanina na-discuss natin yung SITUS principle for Are You Real, Sir? ID. Okay? So, tandaan nyo yun. Are You Real, Sir? ID. Ngayon naman, pag-uusapan natin yung gain on sale of properties. Gain on sale of properties. Kapag ho gain on sale of property, syempre, di ba, kapag nagbebenta tayo ng property, minsan, hindi natin naiiwasan na nagkakaganansya tayo. So, kumikita tayo because of the sale of property. Kasi minsan, di ba, yung depreciated value niya, and then mas mataas yung pagbenta natin kaysa sa depreciated value. Say, binili mo siya noon ng 1 million. Ang value na lang pala niya ngayon is 300,000. Pero binenta mo ng 500,000. Diba? So, that is actually a 200 peso gain. Okay, yung 200 peso tuloy, 200,000 peso gain. So, yung 200,000 na yun, it is considered a gain on sale of property. So, kapag ho gain on sale of property, ito ho yung mga SITUS rules na mag-a-apply. Ano ho yung una? Ano ho yung unang SITUS rule? Yung unang SITUS rule is for personal property. Kapag ho personal property, okay, domestic securities. Okay? Ano ho yung mga tinatawag natin na domestic securities? Shares of stocks. Okay? Shares of stocks. Bonds. Capital instruments or basta yun, mga money market instruments. Anything that has to do with trading or non-trading securities as long as they are investments. Okay, short-term investments or long-term investments. Basta anything that is connected with financial instruments or financial securities. Okay? Kapag ho domestic yan, it is assumed to be earned within the Philippines. Ano pong ibig sabihin ng domestic? Kapag ho sinabi nating domestic, yung mga financial instruments connected to Philippine finance. So ano ho yung mga example nito? Mga shares of stocks, bonds, di ba? And other financial instruments. That are within the Philippines. So whether they may be shares of stocks from a publicly listed company here in the Philippines, like say for example, Philippine Stocks Exchange, like Ayala Company, SM, Jollibee, di ba? Mga yon, shares of stocks siya that are within the Philippines and they are considered domestic securities. Philippine government bonds or private bonds, bonds by Ayala, for example, di ba? So yung mga yun ho, they are located within the Philippines. And again, kapag ho, binenta yang mga gain or domestic securities na yan, it is assumed to be earned within the Philippines and not outside the Philippines. Okay? So, yun ho yung mga personal property which are domestic securities. So, domestic securities meaning, di ba, yun nga, mga financial instruments connected to Philippine finance. However, if those securities are connected to foreign sources like foreign bonds, anong tawag dito? Shares of stocks from foreign companies or foreign entities, diba? Like, those stuff like that, or other financial instruments that are originating abroad, diba? They are assumed to be earned outside of the Philippines. Siyempre, kapag binenta siya, okay, binenta siya elsewhere, but then they are domestic or securities outside of the Philippines, then therefore they are assumed to be earned outside the Philippines. Kabaliktaran lang ho ng domestic securities. Okay? Yun ho yung SITUS principle for a domestic security. Okay? Okay, we move with a personal property or other personal property. So, for personal properties other than domestic securities, okay? For personal properties other than domestic securities, those examples would be furnitures and fixtures, ano pa ba? Basta madami. Motor vehicles, diba? Yung mga yon, equipments, machinery, lahat ng yon, they're example of personal properties, diba? Other personal properties that are not domestic securities. So kapag yun po yung case, kapag personal property po siya na ganon, other personal properties, okay, the SITUS is wherever the property is sold. So kung saan man ho binenta yung property, okay, doon po yung SITUS ng income. Regardless of where, okay, regardless of where you actually receive the cash. Okay, say for example, nabenta mo siya abroad, pero saka lang pinadala sa yung pera nung nasa Pilipinas ka na. Ganon, di ba? So, iba ho yun. Iba ho yun, di ba? Iba ho yun. Kung saan ho binenta talaga yung property, dun ho ang SITUS ng income. Regardless of whether or where you receive, okay, the payment. Ganon, okay? Regardless of whether or where you received the payment. And lastly, we also have sale of real property. Okay, so any gain that we got on a sale of real property is deemed, okay, earned wherever the property is located. Wherever the property is located. So, kapag sinabi ho nating real property, sample nito would be, land and building. So, yun ho yung dalawang main, okay, real property. Of course, kasi syempre, they are called immovables, di ba? Personal property are movable property. Real property are immovable property. So, kapag ho, personal property, it is wherever it is sold. So, regardless of where it is around the world, kung saan po siya binenta, say, binenta po siya in the United States. So, ang situs, United States. Okay? Or so, outside the Philippines. So, while on the other hand, kapag po real property, kahit ho na-execute yung sale dito sa Pilipinas, but the real property is located outside of the Philippines, then it is an income or a gain on sale that is situated, or the situs of which is outside of the Philippines, not inside the Philippines. Okay? So, yun ho yung situs of income for gain on sale of real property. Ulit lang ho natin ha, reiterate natin. Kapag ho domestic securities, it is assumed within the Philippines. Domestic securities are financial instruments connected to Philippine finance, stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments that are connected to the Philippine setting. Okay, so domestic stocks, so domestic bonds, government bonds, okay, and other financial instruments within the Philippines. And then other personal property naman, okay, earned wherever the property is sold. So, titignan ho natin yung place of sale. Place of sale ng personal property. At yun ho yung magiging situs natin. And lastly, real property, we will look at the location of the property. Where the property is located. Okay? Siyempre, may mnemonics din po tayo dyan. May mnemonics po tayo dyan. Okay? Kapag sinabi nating domestic security, di ba? Security, from the term itself, security, secure, di ba? Kapag secure ka, always stay within. Okay? Stay inside. For you to become secure, always stay inside. So, para mas secure ka, stay ka within. Para mas secure ka, stay ka within. So, domestic securities within. Domestic securities within. Now, other personal property. Ang bagay na nagagalaw, pwedeng dalhin around the world. Ang bagay na nagagalaw, pwedeng dalhin around the world. Okay, meaning, kapag personal property pinag-uusapan natin, it can be moved around the world. It can be sold anywhere around the world. Okay, so kapag nabenta po siya on sources or in places other than the Philippines, then that is the situs. So kung naibenta siya sa Algeria, for example, or kapag nabenta siya sa South Korea, sa China, okay, sa India, yun po ang magiging situs ng sale of real property or ng personal property. Real property naman ho, kung saan nakalocate yung kung saan nakalocate yung property, kasi ang hindi nagagalaw, nakatirik sa lokasyon. Ang hindi nagagalaw, nakatirik sa lokasyon. Ibig sabihin nito, okay, immovable siya eh. So kung nasaan man siya, dun na siya, wala nang lipatan, 'di ba? Hindi na mailipat. So kapag yung real property ho na yon, say yung piece of land nakasituate sa Baguio City, then ang situs is within the Philippines. So if it's situated say in Brazil, okay, for example, so may malawak kang lupain sa gitna ng Amazon forest. Wow, bongga. Okay. That is a real property outside of the Philippines, located outside of the Philippines. So kahit man po ibinenta mo siya dito sa Pilipinas. So dito sa Pilipinas na execute yung sale nung property na yon. But then again, yung lokasyon niya sorry about that, guys. Nasa Amazon, Brazil. Okay? That is already situated outside the Philippines. So, ang situs niya, outside of the Philippines or without the Philippines. So, yan ho yung mnemonics natin. Para at least you will have like a clearer memory of how the gain on sale of properties work. Diba? So, situs of income po yan for gain on sale of property. Kapag ho, domestic security, para mas-secure ka, within. Secure within. Ang bagay na nagagalaw, pwedeng dalhin around the world, which is why, kung saan mo siya binenta, yun ang situs mo. And lastly, ang hindi nagagalaw, nakatirik sa lokasyon. So, kung saan man siya located, yun ang situs mo. Okay? Yun ho yung mnemonics natin. Now, let's apply those concepts in a problem. Hindi, joke lang. Wala pa palang problem. Meron pa pala tayong, dito. Meron pa pala tayong sample, or meron pa pala tayong situs rule dito before nung example. Okay, so, Ano naman, ito, for dividends. So, kung kanina, we are talking about gain on sale of property, whether it may be domestic security, other personal property, and real property. Okay? Ito naman ho, we are talking about the dividends that are received by an individual. So, si individual, say for example, is a stockholder. And syempre, kapag stockholder ka, you are entitled to dividends. And may rules ho tayo kapag dividends ang pinag-uusapan natin. Nakadepende ho siya sa kung kanino mo na-receive yung dividend. Ano yung pinakaunang rule? Our first rule is, if the dividend was received from a domestic corporation. Ano ho ang ibig sabihin ng domestic corporation? When we say a domestic corporation, it is a corporation, okay, organized under Philippine law, plus located in the Philippines. Kaya ko siya tinawag na domestic corporation. Okay, it is a corporation which is organized under the Philippine law. Okay, and it is located in the Philippines. Ayan. So, napakarami pong example nito. Diba? We have SM, we have Jollibee, we have the Ayala Group of Companies, diba? BPI, Globe, PLDT. Lahat ho sila corporations that were established using the Corporation Code of the Philippines. So, dun ho nila nakuha yung pagkatao nila. Therefore, they were organized under the law of the land or the Philippines. And the fact that they are located here in the Philippines, syempre, mga bigating corporations na sa Makati City sila, dun sila naka-headquarters. And their main operations, of course, are in the Philippines. Diba? Si Globe, ang sineserbisyohan niya dito sa Pilipinas. PLDT sa Pilipinas. SM here in the Philippines. And they are headquartered here in the Philippines. So, walang lusot. They are considered domestic corporation. At kapag daw ho si individual ay naka-receive ng dividends from a domestic corporation, then the dividends received by that individual is considered to be within the Philippines. Domestic Domestic, nasa loob. Domestic, nasa loob. Within. Domestic, nasa loob. Within. Okay? Yun ho ang SITUS ng dividend income kapag nanggaling ho siya sa isang domestic corporation. On the other hand, kapag naman ho, non-resident foreign corporation, ito po yung polar opposite ni domestic corporation. Kapag ho non-resident foreign corporation, it is a corporation organized under foreign law. Okay? Foreign law. Okay? And is located outside the Philippines. Okay? Located outside the Philippines. Yan. So, pinaka-prime example ho nito is Amazon, di ba? Amazon, they're located in the United States. Okay, Google, Apple. Google is located in Mountain View, California. Di ba? Apple is located in Silicon Valley, if I'm not mistaken. Silicon Valley, California. Okay? So, yung mga yun ho, they are considered resident or non-resident foreign corporation. Why? Because, first of all, they are organized under the law of the United States. And the second, they are located and headquartered in the United States, obviously. Diba? So, they are considered non-resident foreign corporations. So, since nasa labas ho sila, it is safe to say that the dividends that we are receiving from these non-resident foreign corporations are considered earned or SITUS outside. Okay, ang SITUS ho ng mga dividends na nakukuha ng mga individuals from non-resident foreign corporations outside the Philippines. Outside. Yun ho ang SITUS. Okay, kasi may mga may mga Pilipino na may hawak na foreign shares. Mga shares from Google, Apple, Amazon, 'di ba? lahat ho ng yon, considered outside. So, kung may ma-receive man sila ng dividends, those are dividends outside of the Philippines. Okay? I'm sorry. Yan. Outside of the Philippines. So, yun ho ang yun ho ang pagkakaiba ng domestic and non-resident foreign corporation. Okay? So, kapag domestic corporation or DC, loob, SITUS is within. Kapag naman ho yung dividend galing kay non-resident foreign corporation, NRFC, labas. Okay? The SITUS is outside. SITUS is outside. Okay? Yun ho yung dalawang general rules. Yun yung dalawang basic rules for dividends. Okay? For dividends. Yan. So, let's see. Meron ho tayong example dito. So, this example combines both yung gain on sale of properties and yung dividends. Okay? Gain on sale of properties and dividends. So, yan. I-discuss natin siya one by one. Again, our favorite character, Oyun-hee, had the following income items. So, sabi niya, may mga income na naman daw ho si Oyun-hee aside from the income that was given kanina. Okay, so, yan. So, Oyun-hee had the following items of income. Number 1, gain on sale of Philippines corporation shares. Gain on sale of a Philippine corporation shares worth 200,000. Next, gain on sale of South Korean bonds, 300,000. Next, gain on sale of a piece of land in Baguio City. Next, gain on sale of a car located in Los Angeles, California. Wow, ang arte. Next, gain on sale of machineries in Pampanga. And lastly, dividend income from BPI shares, a domestic corporation. Okay, now, let's go over it one by one. Let's revisit our SITUS rules. Unahin natin si gain on sale of a Philippine corporation shares. Okay, when we say a Philippine corporation shares, it's very much obvious that this is a domestic security. Am I right? Okay. So this is a domestic security. And what do we mean when we say it is the domestic security? It is a financial instrument connected to Philippine finance, and that may be a shares from a Philippine corporation, which is very much obvious right here, diba? So if that's the case, na domestic security ho ito, and binenta mo siya, you had a gain on sale, then what is the SITUS of that particular gain on sale? Okay, according to our rules, it is within, right? Okay, within. Okay. Next, we have the sale of South Korean bonds, which is actually the polar opposite of domestic security. South Korean bonds, meaning it is a foreign security. So, it's very much logical that it is without. Okay, without. Next, we have a gain on sale of a piece of land in Baguio City. Okay, gain on sale of a piece of land in Baguio City. Again, piece of land is an example of what? An immovable property, or aka real property. Tama? Okay? Now, since this is a real property, the SITUS rule applies. That applies is, of course, the SITUS in which the property is located. So, wherever the property is located, yun ho ang SITUS natin. So, where is it located? Baguio City. And it's very much obvious that Baguio City is a part of the Philippines, which is why, okay, the gain on sale, accordingly, is classified an income within. Okay? Kasi real property ito di ba? So, kapag real property, yung gain on sale nito is within the Philippines. Next, gain on sale of a car located in Los Angeles, California. So, car is an example of what? Other real property, di ba? other real property. So since it's another example of other real property, then, okay, then, kapag, ay, other real tuloy, other personal para, sorry, personal. Okay, other personal property. So since that is classified as other personal property, then the SITUS rule that applies is wherever the car was sold. Okay, wherever the car was sold. So saan po ba binenta yung car? Wala hong sinabi dito. Wala hong sinabi dito. However, the mere fact that it is located in Los Angeles, California, it is very much, okay? It is very much already a manifestation that it was also sold in Los Angeles, California. Therefore, okay, it is without. Diba, paano mo ibibenta kung nandito? Paano mo ibibenta kung wala naman sa vicinity yung, wala naman sa vicinity of sale yung property mo, diba? So, most often than not, okay, meron hong physical existence yung property na ibebenta mo during the actual sale already. So, most often than not, yung car, which is located in Los Angeles, California, was probably, okay, most probably was also sold in the same location, which is Los Angeles, California. So we can safely assume that it is without. Okay, next, gain on sale of machineries in Pampanga. Okay, in Pampanga. Again, this is another example of another personal property. And as you can see, it is, okay, it is within the Philippines. Kasi nga, the sale happened in Pampanga, which is within the Philippines. Therefore, the gain on sale is classified accordingly as an income within. Okay, and lastly, dividend income from BPI shares, a domestic corporation. Again, ang dividend rules natin, if the dividend came from a domestic corporation, loob, that is within. Domestic, loob, within. Okay? Within. So let's see if we are right. So tingnan natin kung tama tayo. Pack. O, diba? Yan. So, hindi, wait lang. Sige. Screenshot muna ninyo kung gusto nyo. Before we go to our next slide. Okay, so with that, we go to our next slide. So this is the detailed answer. So this is the detailed answer. So makikita nyo guys, we have segregated it. Okay, we have segregated it from income within and income without. So, kapag within, gain on domestic shares, gain on sale of land located in Baguio City, gain on sale of machinery in Mexico or in Pampanga, and lastly, dividend income from a Philippine or a domestic corporation. So, adding it all up, we get 1 million. Okay? We get 1 million pesos. And then, without naman, we have the gain on foreign bonds, and of course, the gain on sale of car, which is in the United States. So, 400,000 po ang income natin without. And just like our problem kanina, we have also discussed, okay, the classification. So, kung makikita nyo guys, di ba, again, kapag resident citizen ka, you are taxable within and outside. So, basically, Uyun He, assuming that she is a resident citizen, she will be taxed both on the income within and the income without. Okay? Income within and income without. And of course, ganun din dito. Okay? Ganun din dito. Ay, wait lang. Okay? Mali to guys, ha? Papalitan ko to later. 1 million dapat to. Napagbaliktad ko yung within and without. Sorry. Okay? So, yung outside kasi yung 400k, but then, ang total reportable income nila, dapat nila is yung within. So, anyway, let's proceed. Kapag resident citizen si Uyun He, okay, she is taxable from income both within and outside. Okay, so therefore, she will report a total gross income for taxation purposes na 1.4 million. On the other hand, if she is a non-resident citizen, a resident alien, an NRA-ETB, and an NRA-ETB, then she will not be taxable on the outside income. she will only be taxable within. So, ang mag-a-apply ho is yung income within, which is 1 million pesos ba. So, 1 million ho. Okay? 1 million. Hindi yung 400k ha. Pasensya na. Erratum to. Ilagay natin. It should be 1 million. Okay? So, yun. Tandaan nyo na lang yan. Wag kayo mag-alala. Yung i-upload ko na PowerPoint, edited na to correct this para maging 1 million siya. Okay? Don't worry. Okay. So, yun. Yun ho yung SITUS rules for both gain on sale of property and dividend income. But we are missing one thing. Missing one thing. Ano ho yung isang bagay na to? Ano yung one thing na to? Ano yung one thing na to? Okay? So, meron pa ho tayong third rule in terms of dividends. So, kung kanina, ang general rule natin ng dividends is kapag domestic corporation, loob, non-resident foreign corporation, labas. Okay? However, meron pa ho tayong nakakalimutang isang type ng corporation, and that is what we call a resident foreign corporation. Paano po natin masasabing resident foreign corporation ng isang corporation? Because unlike non-resident foreign corporation, a resident foreign corporation, okay, although foreign corporation siya, meaning it is a corporation that is established and organized under foreign law and foreign land. So, basically, foreign corporation siya kasi nga, na-establish siya abroad using the foreign law. Okay? Yung law na nasa country na yon. Okay? Foreign corporation siya. However, they are considered resident. Unlike non-resident kasi, kapag sinabi nating non-resident, foreign corporation na nga sila at wala pa sila dito sa Pilipinas. Kung meron man, maliit na operation lang. However, a resident foreign corporation is a foreign corporation but, okay, has a major operation dito sa Pilipinas. So, may branch ho siya sa Pilipinas and yung branch ninyo, yung operation niya na yon, sobrang laki. Wide po siya. In a sense that it is already a big corporation on its own here in the Philippines, despite the fact that it is actually a foreign corporation. So it has established its presence here in the Philippines. That is why they are considered a resident foreign corporation. Okay, kapag naman po si individual ay nakatanggap ng dividend from a resident foreign corporation or RFC, okay, iba po yung rule. Okay, i-apply po natin dito yung tinatawag nating predominance test. Predominance test. From the term itself, dominance. Ano yung mas dominating? Yung income within or income outside? Kailangan nating tingnan. Kailangan nating tingnan. Ito ho yung tinatawag nating predominance test. Take note that the predominance test, mga ading, only will apply, okay, if the individual received dividend from a resident foreign corporation. Otherwise, kapag ho domestic corporation, ito ho ang mag-a-apply na rule. Okay? Ito ho ang mag-a-apply na rule. Or if kapag NRFC siya or non-resident foreign corp, ito ho ang mag-a-apply na rule. Okay? Yung loob at labas na rule natin. Okay? Tandaan nyo yung loob at labas na rule. It will only apply for DCs and NRFCs. Paano naman po pag RFC? Yun ho ang application ng predominance test. Kay RFC po mag-a-apply ang predominance test. Ano ho yung predominance test? Okay? The predominance test, okay, the predominance test aims to identify whether the Philippine income of the entire world income that is generated by the resident foreign corporation is large enough to conclude that they are operating within the Philippines. So, ang makikita natin dito, gaano ka-major ang operations, gaano kalawak ang operations ni resident foreign corporation dito sa Pilipinas kumpara sa operations niya sa buong mundo. Kasi, ang rationale ni BIR, kung mas madami namang operations na ginagawa dito sa Pilipinas kesa sa rest of the world, then, okay, it is safe to assume na dito kayo sa Pilipinas nag-ooperate, and it is also safe to assume that that the SITUS of your dividends are in the Philippines based on income. Okay, yung income po ang magiging metric natin dito. Yung income po ang magiging basehan natin dito. Let us explore. Ang una natin kailangang hanapin, ang una natin kailangang identify is number 1, tingnan natin yung 3-year cumulative Philippine income nung resident foreign corporation na yon. So, i-identify natin yung kabuuan ng lahat ng income niya for the past 3 years. Sa nakaraang 3 taon, titignan natin yung net income niya, okay? Dito sa Pilipinas lang, ha? Muna. Okay? And then, i-add natin sila, i-aggregate natin sila, ito total natin. And then, next na gagawin natin, kailangan natin yung worldwide income. Worldwide income meaning, yung combination ng Philippine income plus yung income from abroad. From abroad. Okay? From abroad. Please note na yung 3 years saka lang magsisimula on the year before the dividend was declared. So, say for example, 2021, okay, nag-declare si RFC ng dividend. Okay, yung kukunin natin for computation of income, okay, should start from 2020 to 2018. Okay, so yung year 2018, 2019, 2020, yun ho yung gagamitin nating test for the predominance test, or yung gagamitin nating figures for the predominance test. Same is true with the world income. Okay? World income. So, say, 2019, na-declare yung dividend at nabayaran yung dividend, 2018, 2017, 2016 ho yung magiging basis natin. Okay? Basis natin. And then, once na-compute na ho natin yung total Philippine income for 3 years and yung total world income for 3 years, i-divide po natin. So, kukunin natin yung ratio. Ratio of Philippine income to world income. Okay? And then, saka natin i-apply yung rule. Ano ho yung rule? Okay, ito ho yung formula natin, di ba? Kapag ho yung X or yung ratio ng Philippine income sa world income natin ay more than or equal to 50%, then the dividend is said to be partly within and partly without the Philippines. Ang gagamitin ho natin yung actual ratio. So, kung ano yung nakuha natin na ratio na to, say for example, 60% ito or 70%, yung 70% i-multiply natin sa binayad na dividend doon sa individual taxpayer. At yung result po na yon, yun yung within. At yung natira, syempre, it is without. Okay? So, mix po siya. So, part of it is within, and part of it is without. However, kapag yung ratio na to, yung X na nakuha natin is less than 50%, then, okay, it is to be considered lahat ng yon without. Without. Okay? Yan. So, let's look at an example para at least maintindihan nyo kung ano pinagtatatalak ko dito. Okay? So, sabi niya, during summer of 2019, Shim Suryon, kilala niyo yan, Shim Suryon received a 500,000 dividend income from Chong-A Foundation, a renowned culture and arts company in South Korea, with operations in many parts of the world, including the Philippines. Chong-A had the following income schedule for the past 3 years. So, himahimayin natin yung problem. Si Shim Suryon daw po, nakareceive po siya ng 500,000 na dividend noong 2019. Okay? So, si Chong-A Arts High School or si Chong-A Foundation, it is a corporation that is established in Korea. But then, they have operations worldwide. And of course, may operations sila dito sa Pilipinas. So therefore, Chong-A Foundation can be considered an RFC. Okay? A Resident Foreign Corporation. Ayan. So, since Resident Foreign Corporation po si Chong-A Foundation, okay? uh, mag-a-apply po sa kanya yung tinatawag natin predominance test. Ano yung kailangan natin tingnan? Yung income niya for the past 3 years. Okay? Preceding the year of declaration of dividends. So, 2019 na-declare yung dividends. So, obviously, ang gagamitin nating metric would be yung 2018, 2017, and 2016. So, nakalista na ho siya dito for your convenience. So, sabi niya, ang income daw ni Chong in the Philippines during 2016 is 100K. And then, abroad naman, 200K. So, ang total niya worldwide would be 300K. So, that is inclusive of the Philippines and other abroad. Next, 2017, ang Philippine income daw ho niya is 200,000. So, malakas ang operation niya sa Pilipinas. 200,000. And then, abroad daw, 100,000 lang. And then, ang worldwide income, therefore, would be 300,000. That is the aggregate of both Philippine income and income from places other than the Philippines. And lastly, for 2018, Philippines has an income of 300,000, Chong-a. And then, Chong-a had an income of 100,000 from other parts of the world. So, 400,000 ang total worldwide. So, kapag ito total ho natin, yung 3 taon na yon, okay, ang total of the Philippine income would be 600,000. Okay? Ang total naman abroad would be 400,000. And ang total worldwide would be 1 million. Now, let's see how dominant the Filipino operation is. Okay? Tignan natin. So, ang kukunin nating mga figures would be this one and this one. So, si total or aggregate Philippine income for 3 years and si aggregate worldwide income for 3 years. Yun yung gagamitin natin for the computation. Okay. So, ang computation natin, syempre, Philippine income over world income. Gaano ka-dominante ang Philippine income? Okay? So, tignan natin. 600,000 daw ho ang total Filipino income ni Chong-a. And then, ang total worldwide income lang niya is 1 million. Meaning, 60% ho ng world income ni Chong-a ay galing sa Pilipinas. Okay? This means that the operations of Chong-a is very much dominant here in the Philippines. Okay? Sa kabuuan ng operations niya worldwide, ang pinaka-dominante hong operations niya ay nasa Pilipinas. As manifested by the level of income. Na kung makikita nyo, 60% ho ng total income ni Chong-a nang galing sa Pilipinas. And that is, okay, the predominance test. So if that's the case, ang mag-a-apply na rule is yung ratio rule. Okay, since Shim Suryon, okay, Shim Suryon got a 500,000 dividend. Yung 500,000 dividend ho na to, okay, it can be construed as partly within and partly without. Meaning, ang ratio ho nung dividends ay natanggap, it is assumed to be earned within the Philippines and the rest is outside the Philippines. Anong gagamitin nating ratio? As mentioned a while back, ang gagamitin nating ratio would be this ratio na nakuha natin in the computation. That is 60%. So, since 60% ho ng world income ay Philippine income, then, it's safe to assume that the 500,000 dividend composed of 60% Filipino income and 40% abroad or worldwide income. So, computing, we have 500,000 times 60%. Okay? The portion of the 500,000 dividend that is within should be reported at 300,000. While the portion that is without or outside is 200,000. So, kapag ita-table mo yan, di ba? Tapos ila nakalagay sa baba, dividend from a resident foreign corporation. May partly within, so naka-split ho siya. Hindi ho siya gaya ng ganito. Di ba kung dito kanina, yung kabuuan, either within or without lang, walang hati. But if it is pertaining to a domestic foreign corporation, or no, resident foreign corporation, if it's pertaining to a resident foreign corporation, then, okay, yung predominance test, kapag ganun yung result, okay, it's partly within and partly without. So, kapag ipapresent po siya, say for example, ito, dividends from a resident foreign corporation. Yung within po, 300K. Yung without, 200K. Ganun po yung construction niya. Ganun po yung pagkakagawa ng problem. Kung sakali. Okay? Yung sakali. Yan. Ganun ho yung presentation under the predominance test. So I believe that you have already understood what predominance test is all about. Now, assuming baliktad ho sila. Say, yung Philippine income is 400,000 lang and then yung abroad is 600,000. So, syempre, magpapalit yung sagot natin. 400,000 over 1 million, magiging 40% lang ho yung ratio natin. So, kapag 40% lang ho yung ratio, it is very, it's very low. And, hindi siya pumasa dun sa threshold test natin. Di ba ang sabi natin kanina, when the ratio falls below 50% or is less than 50%, okay, yung total ng dividend is considered without the Philippines. So, kapag ganun po, na 40% ito, kunwari lang, yung 500,000 po, buong yan, okay, it is considered outside or without the Philippines. Wala hong ratio. Automatic po. Kapag mas mababa to, yung 500, write mo na outside or without the Philippines agad. Okay, so that is the predominance test for dividends received by an individual from a resident foreign corporation. I hope you have understood, okay, the topic. And lastly, we have the SITUS on income for merchandise income. So kapag sinabi nating merchandise, di ba, it is buy and sell. So, bibili ka ng or magpa-purchase ka ng mga ibebenta mo and subsequently you will sell them. Kaya siya tinawag na buy and sell, aka merchandising. Ano naman ho ang SITUS ng merchandising income? Kung saan nyo po binenta yung goods. Kung saan nyo po binenta yung goods, yun ang SITUS ng income. Okay? Irrespective or regardless of where you purchase the goods you use to sell, okay? Yung kung saan nyo po talaga binenta, yun ang SITUS. Okay, say for example, nag-purchase ako ng Oreo here in the Philippines. So may supplier sila here in the Philippines. Pinurchase ko siya within the Philippines. Okay, from that particular supplier na nasa Pilipinas, located sa Pilipinas. And subsequently, yung Oreo na yon binenta ko here in the Philippines. So, kung saan ko siya binenta, since dito ko sa Pilipinas binenta, it's considered within the Philippines. Now, palitan natin yung narrative. Say, nag-purchase ako ng Oreos outside of the Philippines. So, nag-purchase ako directly sa manufacturing company or sa manufacturing site ni Oreo sa United States. So, dumiretso agad ako kay United States Oreo. Tapos sinabi ko, I would like to purchase Oreo for me to sell. Okay, and then subsequently, binenta ko lang din dito sa Pilipinas. So, since binenta ko siya here in the Philippines, yun ang SITUS ng merchandising income ko. So, yung kinita ko from my sale, okay, dito sa Pilipinas siya matatax. Kahit na sa United States ako bumili ng mga supplies ko to sell Oreo. Okay, so yun ho yung significance ng SITUS. Kahit na saan ko pinurchase yung merchandise ko, ultimately, ang SITUS ho niya is where I actually sold the merchandise. Okay? Irrespective of where I purchased the merchandise. Okay, so that's it for SITUS. So it took us 1 hour and 30 minutes actually. So sobrang haba, but then again, it contains examples din kasi. So medyo you have to understand and you have to actually really master the examples. Kasi yung examples na ito, guys, okay, ito lang din yung mga makikita nyo sa problems. Medyo medyo matitweak lang ng konti, medyo magkakaroon lang ng mga slight differences and may mga trick na ilalagay, may mga panggulo na ilalagay. Okay? But, okay, always stick to the concept. Lalo na sa tax, always stick to the rules. Kung sinabi kong ang SITUS ng interest is yung residence ni debtor, sundin nyo yon. Kahit na madaming panggulo doon sa statement ng problem. kung makita nyo na yung interest income ay na-earn from a debtor that is residing in South Korea, automatic outside yon. Kahit na madaming mga additional information, kung nakita nyo yung mga, yung mga basics, yung mga concepts talaga, yung mga rules, if you have understood the rules and you tend to apply those rules in the actual problems, you won't have any difficulties in answering the problem. Okay? So, stick with the rules, stick with the concepts, and mastery by way of problem solving. Okay? Don't worry, yung mga yung mga examples natin here in the PowerPoint, they are already comprehensive enough. Okay? For you to understand what the rules are talking about. Okay? Plus tong discussion na to, I very much hope na sufficient na rin ito for you to better understand deeper the concepts and the rules. Okay? So, hopefully, kapag may mga quizzes, ganyan, hindi kayo masyadong mahirapan in applying these concepts. Okay, so with that, we end our video lecture for today. So, after this video lecture, okay, 3 p.m., we will have our meeting. Okay, we will have our teleconference meeting already. Okay, so with that, thank you for tuning into this video, and may you all have a great day.